Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Third Element Live. We are doing AI today. So, for those of you who haven't done this before, I am able to see all of your comments in the event section. So, if you have things you want to see or if you have questions, feel free to throw some comments down there and I will get to those as I see them. So, what are we doing today? Let me get my screen shared so we can go through everything that we want to talk about. But basically, what we are looking at, we go, is using Copilot and some generative AI. And a lot of it has to do with how we look at our productivity internally. So, things that we're going to go through today. And actually, I should probably introduce myself too. I always forget to do this. So this is me. I'm the co-founder and co-owner of Third Element, along with Dave Sizer. I do have an IT engineering background. I do have an MBA in IT with a focus in policy and security. For those of you that want to get into the boring things, I do have a couple of kids, both boys, and a couple of dogs, also boys. Everything in my house is male, so pray for me. I still love cake. For those of you that know me from the MSP side of things, you also know that I'm one of the co-founders of one of the large communities out there called the Tech Degenerates. So a community member there, peer group leader, vendor, advisor, and I still love cake. So today we are looking at what generative AI can do for us, both internally, externally, what that looks like. But we're also going to put some rails around it. We're going to talk about it specifically about what it is, what it isn't, and then I'm going to show you how to use Copilot. And Copilot is Microsoft's generative AI. We're going to use the one that's in Edge. We are not going to use the full Copilot license, and I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to talk about some standard operating procedures and how to build those using Copilot because you can. One, because I don't like to write them, and two, because it's kind of fun way to learn how to prompt. I'm also going to show you how to write some policies for anybody that has to do those. We'll talk about different types of prompts that you can use. I have a couple pre-built ones for HR, for marketing. I did one quick one for Excel, and then anything else that you guys want to get into, I will be more than happy to run through some examples of those. And then we're also going to talk about the things that you do not want to do with AI so we don't end up with Skynet at the end of the day. All right. So, getting into what generative AI actually is and its functionality. So, generative AI is a little bit different from some of the other versions of AI that you may think of or think you know. And the only thing that it really is functional for is creating things, whether it's text, whether it's images, from things that it has been trained to do, right? So, somewhere out there, somebody has input information into this particular large language model. It has learned from that, and then it can spit back additional information for you. Now, it can search the web, it can do all kinds of things, but its whole function out there is to create content based on what it knows or what it thinks it knows based on how it's been trained. Then there's also something called predictive AI. And this is where it starts looking at insights into the data that it has available to it. Now, generative AI can do a little bit of this, but when you're talking about predictive AI, this is where you're going to see healthcare models that are specifically trained around predictive AI. So it can take a look at the data sets that it has and say, based on the information that I now know, here's what should be happening. Or I can look at, a model for a new drug and say, this is what the outcome should be. So that's what predictive AI looks like. And then one of the other big questions that I get is, okay, there's all of these models out there. Which one should we be using? So let's touch on that a little bit as well. So ChatGPT is out there, Copilot is out there, DeepSeek is out there, Gemini is out there. There's probably 3,000. There's Perplexity. There's probably a bunch of other ones as well. And then there's all kinds of models built off of ChatGPT as well. Every single model works a little bit differently. ChatGPT and Copilot, even though they're built off of the OpenAI platform, work a little bit differently. And the biggest differences between them, and again, depending on whether you have a paid version of something or whether you're using the free version, is how it is using your data. So if you're using the free version of ChatGPT, it's using your data freely. So you never want to put any type of sensitive data, sensitive information into a model that you do not have your own specific instance for, right? Or that isn't secured in some way, shape, or form. So that is one thing for sure. Copilot itself is made specifically to work with the web results that it has access to, as well as 365. So if you have Microsoft and you want to be using a AI piece inside of that, Copilot is probably your best bet. If you're looking for something that will just give you generative content, ChatGPT may be the model that you're looking for. But again, you want to make sure that you have a paid subscription for that. All right. So I would say take a look at the models that are out there, see which one is best for you. But today, everything that we are going to talk about, every example that I'm going to show you, all has to do with Copilot. Now, the other question is, why would I want to use Copilot for everything? Well, one, because we're a Microsoft shop, not going to lie about that. But two, because I can secure it and I can limit what it has access to. Internally, we are not using Copilot yet. We are still securing all of our data down so it cannot touch um, our internal data. It cannot touch our client data. It cannot look at any of that data that we do not want it to have access to. So, in other words, if you're going to use AI in any way, shape, or form, you want to make sure that you're able to limit where it has access to data. So, we are still doing that, making sure that it won't have access to any of our data. So, the only place that I'm using Copilot currently is within the Edge browser, and I can also get to it from my 365 account, but it doesn't use any of the 365 information. It just gives me a generative AI ability, and I'll show that to you today as well. All right. So that's the how this actually functions. So generation or generative AI, we've got the functionality, how it works, the do's and don'ts for Gen AI. Make sure that you're not putting any type of sensitive data into it. I don't care if it's your data. I don't care if it's client data. I don't care if it's PII or somebody's name, address, telephone numbers. You don't want to put any type of sensitive data into generative AI because it can learn from it, and you do not want to do that. Right? We've talked about the different models. And then some models are better at some things than others. I found that Copilot is actually really good for writing content, especially work related content. One, because that's what it's built for. But two, I've been working with it pretty consistently for about 6 months. So I get really good outputs from it as well. The other piece that you want to think about with any type of generative AI is if you what you're putting into it is what you're going to get out of it. So if it's something you are not truly an expert or skilled in, if you're feeding it information that's kind of weak or not great, you're also going to get weak and not great information coming back out of it. So, in other words, if I wanted to go write a paper about psychology, I am not a psychologist. I've never taken a psychology class. The information that I'm going to be feeding it is weak at best. What it spits back to me may look good, but it may actually be wrong. And I would have no way to know because I am not skilled in that particular subject. I do not know that particular subject, and I would not know what good looks like for that particular subject. So when you're using Gen AI, make sure you know what good looks like. So when your results come back, you have a way to tell whether or not you're getting good information and or whether it can be used. All right. Now I'm going to hop down off my soapbox with that and give you an actual little bit of information here. So what this picture is, and to prove exactly what Copilot can do, I fed it all kinds of information about a friend of mine who lives in a state far from me. He has a llama farm. In my head, he drives a G-Wagon around his llama farm. He doesn't, by the way. I fed it his picture, I fed it his LinkedIn profile, fed it all kinds of information. And Copilot came back and said, I can't use this photo. It was his actual photo because it's sensitive information. Said, I'm not going to do that. It would not give me his actual image. It made him not look like himself. And this is what I got back. So even though I fed it all the information that it could possibly ever need to give me really good results, I got mediocre results. And if you take a look at that llama right in the middle, he's actually missing most of his neck. It is not attached. So I even have some type of weird beheaded llama in my photo. So again, it's good for some things, not as great for others, and it will not use sensitive information. And it will actually tell you that it won't. Not every model will do that. ChatGPT will not do that. I don't believe Gemini will. And I'm pretty sure that Perplexity will take information as well and use it, and sometimes use it against you. So be careful. All right. That said, what can Copilot actually do in Edge? Well, let's start out with what license do you actually need in 365? As long as you have a business premium license, you have access to Copilot and Edge. The only thing that you'll need to do is make sure that you're logged into your Edge browser using your 365 credentials. That's all it takes. That gives you a measure of security inside of your browser, but also within Copilot. So again, I would not feed it specific data. I would not feed it company data. I would not feed it sensitive data, but I would feel pretty secure with the things that I'm putting into it. It's not going to reuse in a way that would harm my company. But you'll see in our prompts today that I'm not using sensitive data either. Microsoft says that it does roll security around it, and it does give you data loss prevention services. In other words, anything that you're putting into it, it's not sharing and it's not training the model, but it's Microsoft. So again, don't put sensitive data into it. Don't put sensitive information into it. Use it for what it is. We talked a little bit earlier about skilled users, right? The average person, as long as they have a level of skill in any subject, they will be able to use AI fairly well. If you have an unskilled worker, they are not going to be able to use AI in an effective manner because the information that they are going to feed it is not going to be specific enough to get a good result back, right? So again, you want to focus on your skilled users if you're going to purchase licenses for sure. And then the information that you're getting back from Copilot or any of the generative AI models or large language models, they're not always 100% current, meaning up to the day today. So when I talked to Copilot earlier today, I asked it when is the date of your current information, and it told me it was March 3rd of 2023 that it was pulling information from, which is 2 years into the past. Now, does that mean that everything that it's pulling is 2 years from the past? No. If it's searching the web, it can search the web with no problem. If it's pulling specific data that it's been trained on, it's 2 years into the past. So again, if something doesn't look quite right, it's probably not because it's pulling from an old source. But again, if you're not a skilled worker or a skilled user, you may not know what good looks like. So you may have to ask the question in a different way to get the result set that you're looking for. But it's just something you need to be aware of with any type of generative AI. Results may not be right up to date. All right. So, what is Copilot good for? Well, it is fantastic for summaries, right? You have a big long document, you can feed the document into Copilot. Again, not with sensitive data, please and thank you very much. And it will spit you back a summary. You can say, hey, will you summarize this document for me? It'll read the document, it'll come back with a nice bulleted summary. Queries, you can ask it questions. What do you think about this thing? What does that look like? I'm trying to do this particular thing. Can you help me out? And it will do that for you. I was able to take a very similar deck like this one from another webinar that I did and say, here's all my notes from this particular webinar. Will you write an article? I'd like it to be 800 words or less, formatted appropriately and SEO'd for this particular title. And it was able to take a webinar, take it down to a blog post essentially, and write that for me. So I didn't have to do that. And it did a really nice version of it. It can also do coding, whether it's low code or no code sometimes, and actual code as well, especially in the Microsoft realm. So if you need a small piece of code, it can help you out with that. Now, again, I would not depend on that code to be completely 100% reliable. I would not assume that it would 100% work, nor would I assume that it would just be plug and play into the code that I already have. I would want to look at it, double check it, run it a couple of times, make sure that it is appropriate before I even use it. Again, just because AI is giving you something doesn't mean it's 100% correct. And the same thing with translating. You've probably all used Google Translate. It does use an AI engine behind it. Copilot can translate as well. You just need to tell it, which language are we translating from or into, and it can take that information and do that for you. Again, it may not be 100% perfect, but it'll get you most of the way there. All right, now here's what it won't do. It will not take personal data. It will not give you medical, legal, or financial advice. It will not give you harmful content. So if you asked it something very controversial, it would not give you the steps to do it, like bomb building or other fun things like that. Can you bypass it? Yeah, you probably can. Should you bypass it? No, you probably should not. Will it give you copyrighted data? It will tell you if something is copyrighted. So be careful with that. And also sensitive topics. It will not do that either. So let me give you an example. We do some work in a specific genre of cannabis. I asked for Copilot to build me an image at one point that was the interior display of a dispensary. And it came back and said, no, that is content that we will not do. It's a sensitive and or harmful content topic, and we will not do it. So there are going to be some things that it will not do depending on how you ask the question. You may need to rephrase, you may need to adjust based on your needs at any given time. All right, so let's get to the fun things. That QR code is actually one of our SOPs written out, and its whole purpose is to do a simple movement for an automation. Now, I can do this a gazillion different ways. When I write any type of SOP, it always has some type of description. What am I trying to accomplish? What does it look like? Who is the SOP aimed at? What's going on in this particular situation? And then I give it a scope. What boundaries does this SOP live in? Like, is it internal? Is it external? Who does this specific thing apply to? What is my scope so it stays within my rails, right? And then I want the process written out very specifically. So I have step-by-step instructions on whatever that SOP is so that anybody can follow it. And then I should be able to test that SOP, make sure that it works properly. And if it doesn't, fix whatever needs to be fixed and then test it again. That's how any SOP is written. So let's see if Copilot can do that. So I'm going to take that SOP that's actually on that QR code. I'm going to give it the prompt, and then I'm going to show you what Copilot spits out. So let me switch my screen to the one I actually need here. So I'm going to jump over to Copilot. And there's what Copilot looks like in Edge. You'll see that it's on the web here. And then I am going to grab my prompt. Give me just a second to cut and copy that. I'm going to paste it in here. All right. So what I'm asking for is an SOP to create a Power Automate function for a workflow. That workflow, basically when I type up a document, maybe it's for a process, maybe it's for a policy, I'm going to pop it into a folder. As soon as it hits that folder, I want it to notify my entire leadership team that I've created something new. They should go check it. They should approve it. And once everybody on that team has approved it, I want it to be moved to another folder into a SharePoint site that my entire team can see after that. So that's my prompt. I've told it what I want it to do. I can then run Copilot, and just that quick, I now have my full SOP. So there's my objective, there's my prerequisite, here are all of my steps. to actually do the flow, how to create it, and then how to test it. And that's all there is to it. I can then copy that, write it into an SOP, save it out, and it's done. Now, the interesting part of that, I can actually take that exact same prompt inside of Power Automate and tell it that's exactly what I want it to do as well, and it'll build the Power Automate for me. So I don't even need to follow the instructions inside of here. Power Automate will do that automatically for me at this point. So it has built in Copilot into Power Automate as well as a couple other different places inside of 365 now that you can use natural language to ask for things exactly the way that you want them. So there you have that. So there's a super simple SOP. That's just an easy way to do it. Tell it what you want, run it, and away you go. So let's jump back over to our fun little slideshow. There we go. So there's our SOP process. One of the biggest things that a lot of us use this for is for policy writing. Um, and when you do any type of policy, it doesn't matter what type of policy it is, whether it's internal for your organization, whether it's an HR policy, doesn't matter what it is. They all have the same structure to them. So when you're setting your prompts up, every prompt that you're going to use is going to include what position that you're working in. Give it some context, right? I'm a business owner, I'm in HR, I'm a marketing professional, exactly what your position is so it knows where to start and how to frame the actual policy that you're writing. And then you want to tell it what you're trying to accomplish. I'm a business owner, I own this type of business, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And then are there any references that you can give it? Maybe they're online, maybe there's a specific thing that you can say, hey, this particular HR policy or this particular CGIS policy is what I'm trying to accomplish here. If there are products around this particular thing that you're trying to do, maybe you use a piece of software. We use something called Trainual for a lot of our policies. So I can tell it, hey, I want to do this type of policy. I'm going to write it in this particular line of business application. Give me all the information that I need to be able to pop into that. And it'll do that. And then if there are additional resources, right? You can point it to very specific things. So I can say, okay, if you look on the web at this particular address, it'll give you all of the information that you need to be able to do this particular policy. So let's put that into practice. So we follow some very specific security guidelines, and we have to write policies for those all the time. So I'm going to bring up Copilot again here. And I am going to pull one of my prompts for one of those policies, and it's actually having to do with, hold on here, got to copy that. There we go. Having to do with cybersecurity awareness, right? So we all have to do that awareness training. And for that particular thing, I'm going to tell it, hey, by the way, I'm an MSP owner. We use this particular product. I'm trying to align to CIS IG3, and I'm going to need a policy. Here's what I'm looking for, right? Here's my context. It's going to cover CIS Control 14 with these particular safeguards: 14.1, 14.2, 14.3, 14.4, 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9, and then here's a article that it can pull specifically from that it's going to explain exactly how our MSP is going to fulfill those controls using this particular software. Great. So I'm going to kick that off. There's my policy being written. And there it is. So it's gone through, it's pulled the information that I need. Now again, I haven't told it my MSP name. I don't need to do that. That I'm going to consider that sensitive data, right? It's telling me exactly how to do all of this, where to input additional information, what safeguards it's actually following, which is great. Gave me everything that I need to be able to put in for my policy, which is fantastic. It even tells me that my policy should be reviewed annually, so on and so forth. I can copy that, paste it into a document, adjust it as needed because you probably will still want to adjust your policies just a little bit to do what they need to do exactly for your own organization. And then for me, what I like to do, if I know I'm writing a policy because I'm assuming I'm going to be audited at some point in time, whenever that is. Maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year, but I'm going to need to know that. So I'm also going to ask Copilot, hey, by the way, I've made this policy. I'm going to assume I'm going to be audited. What types of things would I need to give to an auditor to prove that I've done all of this stuff? Fantastic. So it's going to tell me what I need. So here's my documentation list. It tells me what my security awareness program documentation needs, what my training frequency should be, what the materials are for training, the records I'm going to need, what the training content should be. I'm going to need some reporting. I'm going to need a policy and a procedure, right? I'm going to need to write an SOP for all of this. I'm going to need to write incident response documentation. What does that look like, right? And I can start digging into all of this stuff and say, great, that's fantastic, Copilot. I'm going to need some more information though, because one, I'm lazy and I don't want to have to write all of this stuff. So I can say, that's great. Um, do I have an incident response plan or procedure? Maybe I don't. And I can say, well, hey, Copilot, what if I do not have an incident response plan or procedure? Can I just create one? I mean, the answer is, of course, I can. Let's paste that in there. Please create an incident response plan and procedures to go along with it. And it's going to do that for me. So I have a base incident response plan. Again, you're going to want to very, very specific about what your organization is going to need in all of that, but it'll give you a nice base to start with that. And again, you can keep digging into each one of these categories, asking additional questions, and Copilot will keep building things out for you little by little. All right. So again, that simple policy, one piece of the policy we decided we were going to dig into, and away we go. So now let's do some other things. We all have employees, and we'll probably have somebody that runs our HR, whether it's you wearing that hat for HR, or you have an HR person. Let's say that I'm suddenly in the insurance industry, right? So I'm going to hire a new person and we're going to build some onboarding for them. So I'll read I'm a business owner. I've hired a new employee in my insurance agency. I'd like to build an onboarding schedule that goes over 2 working weeks to introduce them to my business, all of the tools that we used, and their coworkers, because that's important. You want to get them to understand the culture and the people that they work with. Can you make me a schedule and some suggestions of topics that I can build out for them in a program like Trainual? Again, that's the one that we use. And Copilot's going to say, yep, I can certainly do that. Let's let it do its thing. So there we go. Week 1. And you'll say that it's even breaking it up into morning and afternoon, right? So there's day 1, day 2, day 3, so on and so forth. You'll see week 2 starts with compliance and ethics. That's probably a good thing. There's some industry specific compliance requirements that people have to go through, which probably good for the insurance industry. There's some suggested topics for Trainual that I can put into my documentation for my onboarding, right? My company overview. Do I have a mission? Do I have vision? Do I have values? Where's all of that stuff? Make sure that they understand what those are, who all the key stakeholders are, introduce them to your team, what your HR policies are, if there's a handbook, the compliance and regulatory requirements, all of these things, right? So now you can see all of the things that are suggested as an onboarding piece for an employee in a insurance agency. All right, well, great. Well, now I've also figured out that, there are some things in here that I should probably take a pretty good look at. And one of those things is um, compliance and regulations. So I want to do a little bit more about that. And when I built this earlier, put it in as a different number. So bear with me here. Compliance and ethics is number 6. It was number 4 the last time I did this. So it does change things a little bit as you go through. So I'd like to be sure that we take special consideration on topic 6, compliance and regulations, right? Because we want to make sure that that is correct. We certainly do not want anyone skipping over what the compliances are for an insurance person or what the regulatory compliances are either. And we're going to talk about selling, home, property, casualty, vehicle insurance, because that's your average insurance company. And I want to know what compliance and regulations do I need to teach them about. So we're going to ask Copilot. It's going to figure that out. It's going to build that out for me. There we go. So, and it's telling me exactly what I need to be aware of: state regulations, federal regulations, property and casualty insurance regulations, vehicle data, anti fraud measures, ethical standards, all of these things. And that sounds expensive to have to teach all of these things or send them to classes or whatever that looks like, right? So I'm going to need to figure that out as I'm hiring on this employee. So, how can I possibly handle some compliance training, right? How do I handle compliance training for low or no cost for this new employee? Let's figure that out. What does that look like? Oh, look at that. There are free and low cost compliance training options. Let's see how sketchy these are. There we go. Oh, look, it knows that I use a specific vendor for my cybersecurity training. And it can say, hey, maybe they have some webinars available. They do, by the way. Um, there's a free webinar here. That's fantastic. Let's see here. Professional insurance agents offers for free webinars on ethics and compliance. I can click that and it'll take me directly to the website, which is fantastic. There's state insurance regulations, federal. Again, it goes through all of those, but it'll actually give me web links for very specific things. So if I want to go take a look, I can click on any of those. It'll take me directly to the place where it found what I was asking for. And if that works for my organization, I can go do that. But now we've gone the whole way from, hey, I'm hiring a new person. I have no idea what to add into their onboarding, to making an onboarding checklist, getting the information that I need, and even finding low or no cost training for them in a matter of about 5 minutes. So that's not too bad. I know the first couple times that I've done this, I probably spent, I don't know, a month figuring out what our onboarding was. And I just overhauled it the other day, and it took me a full day to go through about a month or two of information. So again, supercharging the availability of your time, effort, and energy as you're using AI that will pull in the information that you're looking for way faster than what you can do. Not only that, but as it adds in information for you, it'll start to formulate some of the questions that you can come back and ask it as well, and kind of keep you always on the right track. All right, let's look at a couple other things that we can do with AI. One of the other things that I use it for fairly frequently is in marketing. So I'm going to switch topics. So I'm going to tell Copilot we're going into a new topic now, and it won't keep pulling information from my previous topic. And I'm going to create a marketing campaign. So let's do that. Let me copy my prompt, give you guys the rundown on this. So I'd like to create an email marketing campaign for my coaching business. I'm going to send out 8 emails over the course of 6 weeks that are going to introduce our coaching company. The company is called Leadership Direct, and we do leadership training using case studies of large corporations from all over the world. We teach about the good and the bad things that corporations have done, and the marketing copy should be written for executives and leaders to appeal for the need to training their managers and directors in the organization, right? So we're talking to the C suites to be able to train their next level of managers. So let's do that. Let's see what it gives us. All right. Well, it looks like it's going to give us a marketing schedule, which is fantastic. Look at that. It's even given us a little bit of what our emails can look like. That's fantastic. I like it, but let's make it fun. All right, that looks great, Copilot. Let's build out the emails a bit. We're going to add our brand voice that is fun and direct, but has tons of corporate jargon in it because that's what everyone loves. Like out of the box thinking and put a pin in that. So let's add that in. All right, let's see what we get. All right, here we go. We're elevating our leadership team, interactive workshops, in depth case studies. Reserve your spot. We're going to get some transformative leadership. It's time to think outside the box and put a pin in hesitation, right? So we're getting some jargon into some of our things. What I'm not seeing is very direct call to action in all of these. So let's do that. Let's get a call to action in every one of these emails. Because if we're going to make these crazy, we're going to make them fun too. All right, let's get call to action in those. All right, so it's going to create those with a call to action. Here we go. And now we have a call to action in each one, right? So there's a link to a website or an introductory video that gets us going. There's a link to a contact form in one, which is fantastic. So now we have call to actions in every one of these 8 emails, but they're boring and they're just text. So let's get an image. So I would like at least 2 images. So we're going to do a fun image for emails 2 and 6. We're going to make it an image of a leader making decisions for their team and off in the distance how incredible that decision was. And we're going to make it cartoon style. And we're going to see what we get. Images usually take just a couple minutes longer because they do have to generate those. So we just have to wait for Copilot. And it's thinking really hard today. So while it's doing that, I'm going to start talking about, oh, there we go. There's our image. That's a lot of crazy in one image. So if it's not what you want, you can say, that's great, but it's not quite what I want. Here's how I want you to adjust that. I need in fact, you know what? Let's do, I'd like it with less charts, not carts, charts with an H. And we'll let it regenerate. So if at first you don't succeed, try again, essentially is what I'm saying. You're never going to get the exact thing that you want on the first try. Occasionally, especially with images, sometimes they're a little wonky. Sometimes the llamas aren't connected to the bodies. You just never know what you're going to get. So you have to adjust them just a little bit. This one is actually more what I was going for in the very beginning. So now we have our leader. Looks like they've made a decision. We have some people in the background with some good outcomes. That's more what I was hoping for. It's definitely done in a cartoon fashion. So that's what I wanted. 2 tries, that's not too bad. Usually on images, it'll take me 3 to 4 tries to get exactly what I'm looking for. Because even there, I might, try to get rid of the rest of the charts or something like that, or pull people out so they don't look like they're at, their son's wrestling match or whatever. It's a little weird, but it'll work. But anyway, super easy way to create marketing campaigns. Couple of prompts, a picture or two, and away you go. For anybody that's gotten one of our marketing campaigns, yes, I did make them with AI. No, I did not do the images with AI. Those are all done in Canva that has its own AI. But this is what copilots look like. All right. Next thing we're going to do, I'm going to switch topics again. So again, I'm going to tell Copilot we're going to do a new topic. And I want help with figuring out some profitability on an Excel spreadsheet, right? I don't know how to write formulas. I don't even like Excel. So I've got sales figures for 3 months for all of my clients. The sales figures, they're going to include all of the widget sales that we've done, the monthly fee for being a client, and any additional items that have been sold to them. And I want to know where my profitability actually is. So I'm going to need a formula for Excel to determine what my profitability for each client is. So I'm going to put that in there. Copilot's going to figure that out for me. It's going to give me a step by step on exactly how to put this together, how to organize my data so it goes in exactly the way that it should be. It's even going to put a example in Excel for me. It's going to give me my total revenue, my total cost, and my profitability, how to set up that formula. There's what that looks like. And it'll give me how to set up each one of these. Can you make these a lot more convoluted and crazy? Absolutely, you can. This is just an easy one to do so that you can kind of see how that actually functions, right? But again, you can do Excel formulas and you can make them as crazy as you like. All right, let's do one more good one here. Um, One of the things that I didn't talk about in the beginning, and I promised myself that I would, but I didn't, is that if you're going to use AI in any way, shape, or form, you're going to have governance around it, right? Because everybody in your organization is using AI, whether they want to cop to it or not, but they do. They're probably feeding all kinds of things into ChatGPT. They're probably feeding all kinds of things into any number of other AI programs out there. Maybe it's sensitive data, maybe it's not. Maybe it's stuff that you don't ever want leaking out of your organization. Maybe it's not. I don't know, and neither do you. So you should have a policy around how your AI is being used. So let's switch topics again. And we're going to ask Copilot to craft a policy for us, right? So I'm going to tell it what I am and what that's going to look like. So again, business owner, I want to use Copilot in my business. I want a policy that's going to govern the use, that's going to cover how my employees should be trained to use AI, right? Because we're going to train them to make sure that they're using the right model and how they're using it. How to limit or not use any sensitive information with AI, how we can monitor their usage as the business, and anything else that should be included in AI policy to avoid misuse or data leakage. So let's start there. It's going to craft up a policy for us on the background, and then we're going to figure out what we missed, because we're going to miss a lot of things anytime you write a policy when you're just doing this with prompts, right? So this gives us an objective, it gives us a scope, just like it does with any other policy. It talks about the training and education, because I asked it to, the data security and privacy, because I asked it to, how we're going to monitor the usage, again, because I asked it to, ethical use, which is good. That should 100% be in there. It does talk about human oversight, which is great. Our policy actually says that no decision can ever be made by AI. So that's something you may want to add in there. Compliance and legal considerations should be in here, as well as incident response. If somebody accidentally does feed something in there, how are you going to fix that, right? And then let's talk about some other things that we've missed, because we have missed a couple of things. We haven't talked about which tools, which AI they're allowed to use, right? Which ones are approved and not approved. So let's add that in. Please add in that Copilot is the only approved AI that employees can use. And it'll rewrite the policy with that information into it as we wait for it to do its thing. There it goes. And you'll see that it starts at the very beginning. Here's the approved one. If you want to write something else in, write something else into it, right? If there are very specific data protections that you want to put in there, right now it has sensitive information and data minimization in there, and it's generally done. And it talks about customer data, financial information, and proprietary business data. If you have specific data within your organization or business that you need it to never touch, maybe it is criminal justice data, maybe it is customer financials or PII or any type of court proceedings that it's not allowed to touch. You tell it that it's not allowed to use that. Put that in your policy. So you can put specific data protections in. Are there usage guidelines? When can it be used? Is it used for business operations? Is it used for writing instructions? Is it used for very specific things? And then you tell it it can't be used for anything else. So you can narrow down how it can be used. Again, we talked about the training and education inside of here. You want to be specific about the types of training that you want people to get from all of this. Maybe it's just literacy, what AI is, how it should be used, the way it should function. Are they going to get regular training updates? And if so, what is that going to look like? So put that information in. And the other thing that this doesn't have in here is what happens if you violate the policy, right? So let's put that in. There should be a violations of policy section that includes reprimand up to termination, general language. So we'll add that in as well. Now again, I've been using Copilot pretty heavily for 6 months. It's kind of figured out what I'm asking in the way that I'm asking it. So there's the violations of policy. It's telling me that there's reprimand, suspension, termination, legal action, that kind of thing. So it's using general language. And again, you're going to modify every policy that you're going to create, whether it's in Copilot or any other AI thing, to go along with your normal rules, regulations, and the way that you write policies, as well as have it overlooked by your legal department to make sure that it is, excuse me, in line with legality in your area, state, country, whatever the case is. All right. All right. I am going to jump back over. There we go. So we talked a little bit about policy writing and some of the other things that you can do with AI. And the only other thing I want to mention here is here's how we prevent AI from going sideways, right? Or how to prevent Skynet, if you want to look at it from that perspective. Again, you want to make sure that you're training your employees how to use it, how not to use AI, and do it appropriately, right? Have a policy that gives you guide rails for what that actually looks like. What are your guide rails for using AI within your own organization? And then you're going to decide how you're going to limit the sensitive information, right? Are you going to give it to Copilot? Or are you not going to give it to Copilot? Are you going to limit it by policy? Are you going to limit it by DLP? Are you going to limit it by, if you're turning the Copilot license on, you can completely remove SharePoint sites from its purview. There's ways to go about limiting sensitive information and what it would have access to. But again, if you're just using some of the AI models that are out there currently, you're probably going to have to put a policy in place and train people on exactly what sensitive information is and what they should or should not ever divulge to an AI. And then you're going to need to figure out how you're going to monitor this in some way. And this is one of the reasons that we recommend Copilot. You have a way to monitor it in some way, shape, or fashion that way, and what people have access to and what Copilot has access to. And then you're going to need to audit, right? Make sure that people aren't going outside of what you said is allowed. And then review and update your policy on the regular. And again, keep training your folks. This is a big old cycle. Things change on the daily in the AI world. So, again, train them, policy, prevent sensitive data, make sure people understand what it is, monitor it, audit it, and then start the cycle all over again. And that, friends, is all I have for the day. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, and we will see you next time.